I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst. On the program, do you feel debates in the House of Commons are constructive?
I do think progress can be made there.
It more or less seems like they're just making fun of each other versus actually getting anything done.
There's a little bit too much division.
There is debate, there's a bit of roughhousing. That's the way it's always been.
Soon after he took over the role as Speaker of the House of Commons, Greg Fergus addressed Parliament about the level of decorum in the House of Commons and how he would like to help foster a culture of civility between opposing parties. Liberal interim House Leader Stephen McKinnon recently echoed those sentiments. But despite those good intentions, many people may feel that a vigorous debate is exactly what's needed to get things done in Parliament, while others may feel that combative behavior during question period may overshadow the issues that are important to countless Canadians. So, what do you think? Our question. Do you feel debates in the House of Commons are constructive?
For the most part, I don't feel they're constructive. It's just political rhetoric back and forth. And I've had hopes when different governments have come in and promised that it will be more constructive, but I don't. I think it's gone worse as we've gone on. Not to blame it on any particular politician, but I don't think it's terribly constructive, unfortunately.
I think it depends on everybody's mood that day, honestly. I know those meetings can go for a very long time and people get worn down very, very fast. I do think progress can be made there.
From what I have seen, I've noticed that there are times where not a whole lot is being talked about. It seems as though people are more concerned about getting a word in than they are about actually addressing problems.
I've watched a few of them myself. It seems more like a spitting match up there now than it is anything constructive getting done. It more or less seems like they're just making fun of each other versus actually getting anything done. So from what I see, it just seems like it's one jab after another versus anyone actually putting something forward that really is meaningful to help the country.
No, most of the times when there's the House is open, whether it be provincially or federally, there's a lot of it's a camera stunt most of the time. Where's the camera? I can talk today, and regard to what they accomplished, and they act like children sometimes. And this is a House Assembly that's supposed to be making rules and regulations and to govern our nation or our province, and they're not doing business in the right way. If they were in the private sector, they'd be fired.
No, not really. No, because a lot of those debates, it should be the governments, the different parties should be coming on side, especially when it's a major thing that makes so much difference to the people of the country. But what it is they just keep spatting back and forth, like one is trying to down the other instead of trying to get improvements.
I find that they're a bad example of what you're showing any young person of how to behave. You know, I watch it a couple of times and I got to turn it off because people ask the same question over and over again. They get the same answer over and over again. And it doesn't seem like anything gets done. It's like, watching school children, fight in class. That's what it's like to just, I don't know. I expect more, I guess, from educated people. And I'm not getting what I want when I watch it.
I do feel that, and I think that everybody has forgotten how it is in the House of Commons. There is debate, there's a bit of roughhousing. That's the way it's always been. And people saying, it's not politically correct this day and age, but that's the way it's always been. So you have to, people that have been there for a long time, you have to give them a little bit of leeway if they want the rules to change. And if they want the rules to change in the House of Commons, they have to make the rules and then everybody can change.
From what I've observed, politicians are always going to try and gain political advantage by asking certain questions that lead down a certain path. That's always going to be a part of the process, but I think there should be a bigger focus on trying to do the right thing. There's a little bit too much division between the parties, and I don't think there's enough collaboration. So I think that would be my general feeling on it.
To a small degree, but for the most part, there could be a better way of doing this.
What would that better way be? Do you know?
Like I said, I haven't had time to analyze that, but I don't know. But there's got to be a better way. Someone that really understands politics should devise a better way than that, you would think. But I'm not an expert, but it just seems like nothing gets done in politics. I'm sorry. They promise you all these things, pre-election. Nothing changes.
A little bit. I've only listened to a few. I find there's a lot more like yelling back and forth, a little bit more like ridiculing than sometimes getting serious discussions done. So I find they could be a little bit more productive.
Constructive is a tough word. I think that sometimes they don't necessarily represent the values of the Canadians that they're supposed to represent. And while I don't watch every single debate every single time, I have seen some recordings of them getting a little disrespectful. Heated might be a word.
That's fair.
Anything done?
I agree. I feel like they could be more productive. I think that there's a lot of times where the point gets away from us and we get caught up in the little things, and then it just leaves the people who are involved in those issues kind of stuck to the side.
Reports say that at least 70% of greenhouse gas emissions around the globe are from the burning of fossil fuels. Environmentalists have been warning us for decades about the dire consequences that could await us if we don't find a viable energy alternative and move away from fossil fuels. In a world where so many items we use on a daily basis, ranging from credit cards to toothpaste, are manufactured through petrochemicals, meaning oil and natural gas, some people feel a phase out or a phase down is a little too soon. So, what do you think? Our question. Is a phase out of fossil fuels a realistic goal?
No, definitely not. We'll never be able to keep it going if everything goes green, electricity. Like, for example, convoy chance out there, the oil refinery, they got it turned into a canola oil plant. We'd get with the program. We get the cleanest oil in the world off the coast of Newfoundland, and there we are, turning our oil refinery into a canola oil plant because that's what the Prime Minister wants. He convinced our Premier into doing so. No, we can't go all electric, no.
No, I don't think it is, because there's just oil involves too much. We just sometimes think of cars only, but there's hardly anything made today that there's not the plastic in. From your butter down to your straws to all that, there's oil attached to it some way or another in the manufacture.
It has to be a realistic goal. We have to make it a realistic goal. I'm all for Newfoundland getting its revenue from oil. However, there's no point of being here if there is no earth. So it has to be phased out. We have to phase out. We have to find another way to live. We're all taking a hit for Muskrat Falls. We can take a hit for fossil fuels being phased out.
I think it's a realistic goal. It's just time frame, right? Like it's not going to happen in 5 years or 10 years, but I think in the next 20 to 30 years, it's something that can definitely happen. The issue with carbon tax and all that is that Canada is a very small population comparatively to the world, and our carbon footprint is not going to be near that of China or Asia or India, and carbon taxing us is not really stopping people from driving, right? So I think it is realistic. I just think that it needs to be a more realistic time frame.
If we don't eventually phase out fossil fuels, we have to worry about life on this planet. So, if worrying about life on this planet isn't realistic, I don't know what is.
It can't keep on going this way. Has to change eventually. Otherwise, either we're going to be dependent on fossil fuels when it runs out, and then we're going to have no structure behind it to save ourselves. So putting the steps in place now to ensure that we don't need that, it is crucial to have happen now for tomorrow's future.
There's much more to be done.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think the time frames are a little ambitious. Yeah. And when you're too ambitious, you fail.
I want change to happen for addressing climate change issues. We have a lot of work to do. A lot of work, and I think we have to aim for something. So we have to put something in place. We have to do something to get there. I have a green car. I have an electric vehicle. So I think we need policies in place. I think we need a lot of things to get there, even not just Canada, but other countries too. And I hope we all start going towards that goal.
It's a necessary goal. There's no other option. It's not a renewable resource. It's going to end, and we need another long-term strategy. Clinging to it, I think, is futile.
I agree. Transportation is one of the leading causes of greenhouse emissions and worldwide, and especially in Canada, we're like such a huge country. Like we rely on
Very widespread.
Yeah, like we need it. So like it's just not sustainable. I think we're making like really good strides towards emission-free transportation, and like to keep the ball rolling.
I would hope so. I think we need to get there. I have a lot of family in Alberta that used to work in the oil patch, so I know that people feel very strongly about it, particularly in the West. But I don't think we make meaningful change in terms of climate change unless we phase out fossil fuels eventually.
I think it should be a realistic goal. Like, it should be something that we are moving towards, and it should be a priority, regardless of if people think it's going to be easy or it's going to be doable. Because at the end of the day, like, I mean, look, we're in Ottawa right now. It's not as cold as it should be. The earth is warming up, and I feel like it should be a priority. So,
yeah, it should definitely be made the priority right now, but unfortunately it isn't, and I think countries need to start working towards that.
Not right now, but let's hope.
Why do you think it's not realistic right now?
Because I don't know one single person who has given up their car or made any changes in their lives.
I think it is. I think it's going to take us a long time to get there, for sure. Yeah. We have, our infrastructure and everything in place currently relies on fossil fuels, so we can get there, but yeah.
I do. Well, I think that the technology is out there. There's proven technology to suggest it can be done. I think fundamentally a part of it, I mean, everybody loves their cars, everyone loves to drive, but there's obviously proven technology that does not involve fossil fuels and automobiles. I think it's just a matter of making automobiles comfortably affordable for your average person.
I think very long term, maybe. I'm not sure if our system is ready for it as quickly as they would like it to happen, but I think eventually we could get there.
When was Black History Month first celebrated in Canada? 1986, 1996, or 2006?
It would seem to be earlier, but I'm thinking 2006.
2006?
I'm hoping 86.
86, 96, 2006.
2006.
I want to say it's 86, but I feel like it's 96.
I would say 2006, if I'm not wrong.
2006.
I want to say 2006.
I'll double that. 2006.
96.
Absolutely correct, my friend. Let's have a handshake.
Thank you very much.
Every February, people across Canada participate in Black History Month. It's a time for Canadians to honor and celebrate the diversity, history, and culture of Black people in Canada, and to acknowledge the many contributions of Black communities across the country. Jean Augustine was the first African-Canadian woman elected to the House of Commons in 1993. In late 1995, she introduced a motion in the House to recognize every February as Black History Month. After winning unanimous support from the House, Black History Month was recognized for the first time in Canada in February of 1996. The federal government plans to appeal a ruling by the federal court stating the government's use of the Emergencies Act in early 2022 to help clear out the protesters here in downtown Ottawa during the convoy protests was unjustified and infringed on the charter rights of protesters. While order here in downtown Ottawa was compromised, the ruling said there was no national emergency to justify invoking the act. But here in the nation's capital, where these protests lasted for about 3 weeks and disrupted the lives of hundreds of residents in the downtown core, some people feel invoking the Emergencies Act was the right thing to do. So, what's your opinion? Our question. Did the recent federal court decision change your mind about the use of the Emergencies Act to end the trucker convoy protests.
Given the situation, I think it was justified. I'm not somebody who's comfortable with a lot more of like police presence and police having the ability to kind of, pull people over more often. But at the end of the day, like, I remember what was happening during the trucker convoy, and, they were kind of in the city making everybody's lives a little bit difficult. And so I agree it was needed at the time and maybe not needed anymore.
I mean, I think there's a country because there's a rural commission who seem to find the opposite. So I think I'm a bit confused about exactly why that is the case. I would say that law enforcement seemed to need reinforcement in order to actually break up the blockade. So there was maybe a justification there. I think the freezing of bank accounts and going to that extent, I think was overreach. I think it was too much. There were people who gave to a cause that they believed in. I don't think that was any reason to freeze their bank accounts. So law enforcement may have needed a bit of help, I would say. So that part of it I think I agree with, but there are other measures that I think were overreach.
I think it was justified. I think that they were dangerously occupying space in our capital. I think that they were given a lot of opportunities to vacate. I think that they were violently spreading misinformation and targeting protected groups. And I think that if that's the only way that they could have left, that's just what had to be done.
I don't know that I know enough about what restrictions exist around the Emergencies Act to know whether or not it was misused. I do think, based on how the events unfolded, that there was nothing done to prevent the occupation. I think that the Emergencies Act was a reasonable solution once it was too late to prevent such a drastic occupation of downtown Ottawa. I wish that it could have been handled sooner, because it was a lot of trauma, noise trauma, and harassment of the population that lives in this area. So
doing that takes away people's freedoms. I strongly disagree with that. I strongly disagree with Trudeau.
Did it change my mind? Yeah. No, because what they decided just recently is what I thought they should have decided all along, not to use the Emergency Act. I think it would have been a lot better for the federal government to have a conversation with the organizers of the Freedom Convoy and meet with them and talk about what was bothering them or what they felt was unfair about mandating vaccines.
Should have never been used to begin with.
Can you elaborate on why do you feel that way?
Well, there was an emergency. It's plain and simple. It should never have been used. It was an overreach, one of many. No.
No, I felt like it was a bad idea to use the Emergencies Act, not because I agreed with the trucker convoy, but because it was too much and it set a bad precedent for the long term.
Yeah, it was very much warranted, as well as, I don't know about you, but I don't want somebody parking at the end of my driveway and honking their horn for a month. And that's what they had to experience in downtown Ottawa. And that wasn't fair to the general populace of Ottawa, who are just trying to get to and from their doctor's appointments, go about their day. And as much as they didn't really see it like that, they could have easily protested on the grounds of Parliament like everybody else does. I think every time I've been to Ottawa, there's been a protest on the grounds, and they could have stayed there as long as they want, but to shut down the city, that's not appropriate.
No, it didn't change my mind about the use of the act, but it definitely clarified we need to adjust how we apply the act in the future legally.
Yeah, so I don't know if they should have done that. I think that, obviously people needed to be able to get through and go to work. Obviously it was stopping a lot of things from happening, but I do think that people do have a right to voice their opinion. And I understand kind of where they're coming from, because it was stopping a lot of work. And I don't fully agree with the whole COVID thing. So I don't know, I'm kind of on their side with it. So I don't know if they should have been able to use the Emergency Act for it.
I think it was justified in stopping their actions. I agree with the court that it probably wasn't justified in going after their personal bank accounts. Maybe going after funding coming in from outside the country was justified, but the actions to hold all those people hostage, anybody that thinks that was a good idea, I'd ask them to invite those people to park in front of their house for 4 or 5 weeks, see how they like it.
Oh yeah, no, it was totally illegal and absolutely unnecessary. And I think that every member of the Liberal Party should be ashamed for the service that they've done for this country during the last 6 years. Absolutely.
They're peaceful protesters, and they should be allowed to protest. It is Ottawa, and Ottawa citizens should be ready for that. If you live in Ottawa, you should already know that's the place that you have to protest when it's a national thing.
No, I thought they should have done it because there's no way of getting rid of all the people in Ottawa there.
And it impacted too many people's lives.
It changed things. Was the EMO the best choice? We didn't have another choice. I don't appreciate how our Prime Minister enforces things or goes about things, but I also think that that's all we had at the time. And really the fault lies with our court system for not enacting better acts that allow for a better use of police services, the military, and different acts that we do have in place.
According to the Canadian Cancer Society, 12% of Canadians are smokers. While that number may be low compared to, say, 40 or 60 years ago, the Canadian Cancer Society feels it's still too high, and it's looking to the federal government to ban tobacco sales to people born after 2008 and raise the legal age of purchasing tobacco to 21. But some smokers and even non-smokers feel this idea wouldn't work and may even strengthen the black market. And if you're going to impose a generational ban on tobacco, then shouldn't alcohol and other potentially harmful products follow suit? So, should Canada butt out on cigarettes? Our question. Should Canada consider a lifetime ban on cigarette sales?
I don't think that is needed, especially with the licensing of marijuana products that are smoked. It'd be very hypocritical to then ban cigarettes. If that was the case, then I think they'd also have to look at banning smoking of marijuana products as well, and I don't think that would go favorably for the government.
I smoke cigarettes, so no, I like to smoke. Yeah, no. Freedom of choice. Let people decide for themselves.
I think that's not a bad idea. The more we can make sure that we have civil liberties, but at the same time extract some of the health problems, the externalities that exist there, and have the people that engage in those activities pay for them, that's a good idea.
No. That's nobody's business. If you want to smoke a cigarette, smoke a cigarette. That's nobody's business.
I'm not a smoker, but you know, obviously it's not good for your health. I'm out here about to go for a run, but you know, I think there is also some freedom that people need to be able to have some choices. If you know, if some people want to have drinks at night, I don't see that being wrong, as long as it's consumed safely. Same thing with the cigarette side. Again, I don't personally agree with it, but I think there's some, you know, you have to give some people some latitude.
No, because prohibition doesn't ever work. We've proven that many times now. They should just continue to do a sin tax on it. If you want to smoke, you're going to pay through the nose to do it, and you're going to be fed all the messages about the health concerns. And at the end of the day, if you still want to do it after all of that time, I guess have at it.
I mean, I think that it would make just as much or more sense to ban sugar. So if we're going to start policing people's consumption, food is probably more impactful than nicotine.
I think Canada should consider a lifetime ban on anything that is inhaled into the lungs, because any type of smoke, including cooking oil, doesn't belong. And we had to put up with forest fires here because of, I would say, somebody forgetting to put a fire guard on the other side of the mountain, and we're inhaling smoke. No, smoking, we know it's harmful. Yes, it goes towards a granny state, but or a nanny, but I'll call it a granny state. We've learned that putting any kind of smoke into your lungs is just not good for your health, so ban it.
I don't think Canada should put a lifetime ban on anything. I mean, ultimately, we're a free country. We can do what we want to do. If you choose to smoke, that's up to you. Now, that being said, you know, I think there are ramifications from that as well. There's increased costs for health care from that, but there's increased costs of health care from other aspects that, or from other places and doings that people are involved with. And, you know, I think in the end it all balances out. I don't think it's any worse for one than the other. That being said, smoking's probably not the best thing you could be doing for yourself. So.
The thing with things like drugs and cigarettes and all of that kind of stuff, as we saw with like marijuana sales, is that if you're regulating it, then you can make it safer for the public, because people tend to go, like I was just in university not too long ago, and if people are obtaining illegal drugs, they could be laced with something else, it's more dangerous. So people are going to get access to tobacco, they're going to have access to other forms of drug paraphernalia, and I feel like if the government's regulating it, then it's a little bit safer. And we've noticed a trend of young people not smoking as much. So I feel like if they're gonna ban it, then people are just gonna want to do it. It's not necessarily gonna stop the problem.
I wouldn't. No, I mean, I think that, you know, what we've seen in the last number of decades is we've got far fewer people smoking than we've ever had at any point in time. You know, ultimately, if people choose to smoke, then, you know, they have the right to do so. The information is right there. It takes up 3/4 of the pack. I mean, people know that it's bad for them. If they make that choice, then, you know, that's up to them. It would be like a lot of other things that, you know, in excess, alcohol, marijuana, other things are legal and people can legally purchase them. It's up to them to be responsible.
I think it's so ingrained into society and culture. I don't think a full-out ban is necessarily what's one. I think Canada has, especially living in England, has stricter rules against close to proximity to buildings, difficulty to get it, times you can get it. Can there be tighter restrictions? Maybe, but also there's a lot of money in it.
No, I think that we should definitely regulate them, inform people of the risks. I think that we should provide everybody with the risk benefit, but I think ultimately that should be given to the, I think we should probably defund big tobacco. I think we should really look at like the whole environment surrounding that, but I think it's a harm reduction tool in its essence.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a clear answer on that one. I think substance use and chemical dependency is such a complicated thing that, I mean, capitalizing on it is always a touchy subject, but we all have our vices.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.